Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Yankees drop an ugly, rain-filled series to the Angels. They lose 2 out of 3 at Yankee Stadium, so not the result that they were looking for. And it's easy to blame it on the weather. We'll talk about it. It certainly did affect the series, but both teams have to deal with it. Angels too, and the Angels have been playing some pretty competitive baseball. I mean, you look at that roster, and it isn't really all that eye-popping in any way, whether it's the lineup, the pitching. It's not great, but they were able to beat the Yankees 2 out of 3, and quite honestly, handily. I mean, both wins that the Angels had were by a very wide margin. It wasn't as if it was really all that close. Yankees, there was a few instances where they came close to hitting like a home run to kind of get them within kind of striking distance, but it didn't exactly play out that way. But yeah, this was, a series that the first game was supposed to be Tuesday. That gets postponed to a doubleheader Wednesday. And somehow they were able to get all 3 games in. Now, really, the weather kind of held up all right for games 1 and 2. It wasn't great. It definitely wasn't, in ideal circumstances. I would say that game 3 was where that maybe under normal, in a different situation, if they felt like it was an easier time rescheduling. There was one, looking at the calendar, I think there might have been one open date that was somewhat feasible, like later in September, kind of that like last week of the season. And so that could have been done, but they wanted to definitely avoid that if at all possible, and they did. And so for that, like that is kind of ideal for both teams, but still, like this rubber game, really, really bad conditions, but they were dead set on completing it, and they did. But this is a game that I think you would normally see postponed. At the very least, some sort of lengthy delay, although I don't think that really would have helped in this case. I think it would have just continued. So, yeah, but hey, Angels were the better team flat out, and that you can't have that. And as I've been saying, the Yankees have been really bad at Yankee Stadium lately, as in the last couple of months, where they finally got off the schneid and they were able to finally win a series at Yankee Stadium, winning 2 of 3 against the Blue Jays, which, again, that was a close one. They barely won it. But then they go back and they lose 2 out of 3 against the Angels. So now this homestand, this 9-game homestand, which was seen as not overly difficult as far as the opponents, is 3-3. And now, going to take on a Texas team, which has had their struggles, but yet on paper, there's still a lot to like with that team, whether it be the lineup, whether it be pitching, and still in kind of what is a weak AL West, they're not out of it. They're about 5 or 6 games out of first place. So, they're going to be motivated, and it's a really big series for them. But, in kind of summarizing the series, and I don't think there's going to be really a whole lot to kind of dive into on a game-by-game level. We'll do what we normally do and break it down as much as possible, but, not a whole lot of these, again, like all 3 of these games were fairly easily decided. It's kind of interesting. The closest game really ended up being the Yankee win, and that one was the Yankees were up 5-0. It really should have been up by more than that. They really couldn't totally break through. But give Ron Washington credit. What he's, kind of with what he's working with without Mike Trout. Trout's out for the season. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani's no longer on the team. And not for nothing. I mean, obviously, it's even worse than that. They did trade away some players, not that many, but some. But also Luis Rengifo, who was one of their big-time bright spots this year, out for the year with wrist surgery. And then also Taylor Ward, he missed a series on paternity leave. So pretty inexcusable, regardless. You have to acknowledge the weather situation. And I haven't even really totally delved into even why it was more relevant as to why it kind of hurt the Yanks. But still, this is not a very good Angel team, right? But they did come off a 2 of 3 series win against the Mets. So the Angels, they have been playing all right, through it all. So the pitching probables, as I had previewed in the Blue Jay episode, it was supposed to be Game 1, Luis Gil, which it was still in this case, but a day pushed back. Game 2 was supposed to be Nestor Cortes. Instead, he pitched Game 3, so he was also pushed back by a day. But what happened was Marcus Stroman, he was supposed to be the Thursday starter, but they ended up pushing him all the way back to Sunday against Texas. And this is really for him to work on things mechanically. He's really been struggling lately. And so they moved him back. And so by doing this, Will Warren ends up starting the second game of the doubleheader on Wednesday. So he was considered like the 27th man. You're allowed one extra player when there's a doubleheader, and that was him. So he was sent back down into the game. And Will Warren, it was his debut at Yankee Stadium. It didn't go well. It did not go well at all. Put the Yankees behind the 8 ball early, and they really just weren't able to kind of climb back in it. And Nestor Cortes' struggles continue as well. It wasn't as if he got absolutely pulverized, but had a really tough time putting Angels hitters away. Not a whole lot of swing and miss stuff. So again, like you look at this rotation, and Clark Schmidt's a very key piece. The way I look at this right now, and a lot can change with less than 2 months until the playoffs. Like so much can change in many ways. But to me, it's kind of obvious who should be in this rotation. It's Cole, Rodon, Gil, and Schmidt. And I understand there's some caveats there. I know that Luis Gil stuff probably plays up in the bullpen, but to me, I'm making main priority the rotation. I think the rotation is a lot more important. In the bullpen, it at least has, it feels like there's some depth to it. Sure. Does it maybe feel like it's lacking like on the upper end? Maybe. But I think that if Gil can if he stays healthy, I think he deserves to and should be in that rotation. And then Clark Schmidt as well. Clark Schmidt was having kind of a breakout campaign before he went down after what was a mostly positive season last year. And I know that Clark Schmidt, he's been in the bullpen before, so I understand like there may be some that could see that. Look, as far as Nestor Cortes and Marcus Stroman go, they really may not have much of a role. And that's just the way it is. Like, because the truth is that I don't really know how much of a factor other than just being long men that they really would have. I mean, maybe Nestor you can kind of utilize like a lefty type of guy, but like I don't really know how effective that'll be. But that's what it is right now. I mean, there's just no doubt. You know who is kind of performing and you know who isn't. But the beauty is that there is still a lot of time to go here. So like those narratives can still change. But I'm just saying right now, there's a pretty clear dividing line in this rotation. And that's just the way it is. And you only really need 3 or 4 starters in these series in the playoffs. So again, on the outside looking in, absolutely are Marcus Stroman and Nestor Cortes. So let's start recapping this series. And the first game, again, you had a rainout Tuesday night, and so they ended up having a straight doubleheader, traditional doubleheader. So like a 4:00 start, and then 30 minutes after the conclusion of the first game would be the second game, which started at around 7:30. So just a little bit later than when it was normally scheduled for. And for the Angels, it was Davis Daniel on the mound, and he struggled. 3 1/3 innings, 7 hits, 5 runs, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts, including a homer. So the Yankees definitely got to him. And then for the Yanks, Luis Gil, who he wins, improves to 12-5. He goes 5 innings, 2 hits, no runs, 5 walks, and 6 strikeouts. So the 5 walks, not great. Again, obviously you're dealing with a little bit unideal conditions, but Gil was definitely not all the way there, but give him credit for being able to go 5 innings. And what was really needed because of the fact that you had the doubleheader, so like a lot of pitchers were used by the Yankees, and it wasn't looking great for him to go 5 innings, but he's able to do it. He ends up throwing 107 pitches. So they're really not – they're showing you as far as like pitch counts within a given game, they're not all that concerned about that. Sure, maybe they're trying to push him back as far as giving him a little bit of rest between starts, but the game itself, they're not afraid to go like we see here, 107. With Gil, he had that one little tough stretch, and we do know that he does sometimes lose the zone, right? That is a concern, but he is tough to hit, flat out. And that's been very apparent. Only allowing 2 hits in 5 innings. That's the type of stuff that we see from Luis Seal. So as far as the Yankee lineup was concerned, and I want to mention one thing, that in Game 3, Anthony Volpe did leave the game. In the second inning of Game 3, he fouls a pitch off of his foot against Angel starter Tyler Anderson, and he would eventually leave in about like the 7th or 8th inning. And at the time when it happened, kind of thought, all right, it was a blowout. Like Volpe, he had a doubleheader yesterday, the day before, so I kind of felt like Volpe, maybe they were just going to give him a rest. But it did turn out that it was injury related, but X-rays came back negative. It sounds like he's going to be okay. Maybe at most he misses a game or two, but knowing Volpe, I feel like probably even less than that. I wouldn't be surprised if he's right back in there, but wanted to at least make mention of that. So the Game 1 lineup was more of a lefty-heavy lineup for the Yankees. Even though they faced righties in both Games 1 and 2, you could tell that Game 2, I'm not sure if it was a reverse splits thing, but they kind of went with the more traditional lefty versus righty match, sort of players in Game 1. And so, it leads to, I guess, there were some funky type-looking lineups in this series. Verdugo, but what's been consistent is versus righties, Verdugo tends to lead off, and versus lefty, it tends to be Gleyber. But, in this game, no Giancarlo Stanton, and so therefore you have Judge at DH and Grisham in center field, and no Gleyber Torres. So Oswaldo Cabrera actually gets the start at second, and we'll talk about Oswaldo. Definitely one of the bright spots. He really, in the limited time that he's had, he's really doing the job. So they really need to try to get Oswaldo in there, I think, as much as they possibly can. I know that it's a little bit of a logjam, but and I guess just going through each player, Verdugo, I thought, pretty solid series for Verdugo. Looked pretty good. Soto was a little bit snake bit where there was some situations where I felt like he hit the ball hard, just right at people. So for Soto, the stats are probably not really going to be there at all. Although there's always that ability to get on base. He rarely will get completely shut down. Like he'll do a little bit of something. But Aaron Judge, he had a really good first game, and then beyond. And again, this is just more me thinking about it without looking at each box score. All I have in front of me is just the first one. But Judge had a really good first game. Got on base like 4 or 5 times. So, I mean, for most players, that alone is going to kind of give you a good series. Austin Wells did a nice job. Honestly, the catcher position offensively in general, whether it was Wells or Narvaez, who played Game 2, they were good. Jazz Chisholm. Now, the good thing is that Chisholm does finally get his first Yankee Stadium Yankee home run in Game 3, but Game 1, 0 for 4 strikeouts, just a lot of striking out for Chisholm. So, had that really nice series, more than nice, amazing series against the Phillies. And the defense continues to be really solid. And I like what Chisholm Jr. brings to the table. However, yeah, definitely, it looked like he was kind of looking to homer. And so hopefully he keeps it more simple, doesn't try to do too much because, definitely want to avoid, having a golden sombrero. And so he struck out at least 7, probably even more, at least 7 times in this series. Anthony Volpe, he does get an RBI double in Game 1. I'm trying to think of what else he may or may not have done, and it's not really totally coming to mind. Trent Grisham, he only started that first game. Ben Rice only started that first game, did get on a couple of times via walk. And so with Rice, he has the ability to walk, but again, the strikeouts are there too. DJ LeMahieu, he started Games 2 and 3. He's looking a lot better. I got to say, he has really been continuing. This is more of the player that we used to see. And that's important. And look, I don't want him necessarily just being slid right back into the starter's role, but legitimately, LeMahieu has really been looking a lot better. And that'll be important for this team. And like I said, Oswaldo Cabrera, really, he was good. He homered actually twice in the series in very limited time. And then Gleyber, I thought Gleyber looked decent at the plate. Not sure if the stats reflect that, but I thought he looked decent. So anyway, And then I'll mention Giancarlo Stanton. Not a whole lot from Giancarlo, who started games 2 and 3. He had at least one hit, but yeah, not a whole lot else to speak of. So first inning, the Yankees are able to score a couple of runs. Verdugo starts it out with a ground rule double, and then eventually with first and third one out, Austin Wells with an RBI single, just continuing to do a nice job batting fourth or fifth for this team. He's been really one of the great bright spots for the last month plus, really more than that, honestly. Just been good. And Jose Trevino is probably not too far from coming back, but if I'm the Yankees, Austin Wells, it should not be a 50-50 split anymore. It should really be Austin Wells, in a given series. I mean, really, it should be like more 2 out of 3. In a 3-game series, you would hope to see Austin Wells at least twice. So that makes it 1-0. And then with 2 out, Anthony Volpe gets an RBI double. So that makes it 2-0 Yankees. And then in the bottom of the second, Oswaldo Cabrera homers off of Daniel. His 7th homer of the year makes it 3-0. So Oswaldo showing some power. And the great thing is, like, even though he hasn't played much lately, hasn't really affected him much. Bottom of the fourth, the Yankees score a couple more runs. A Ben Rice leadoff walk. Actually, a really nice play. Zach Neto was, like, honestly, really the star of this series. He was fantastic for the Angels. You can see there's a few young players in this team for the Angels that really have a very bright future. Shanuel, Neto, Ohapi, not a whole lot else, but yeah. But Alex Verdugo gets an RBI double, gives the Yankees a 4-0 lead. Then the Angels bring on a reliever, Jose Marte, and with 2 out, Aaron Judge gets an RBI single. So a situation where he could have been walked, and they pitched to him, and there you go, 5-0 Yanks. They wouldn't score again, even though I'm not going to discuss. There were a lot of other opportunities to really break it open. They didn't do it. And they end up 3 for 13 runners in scoring position and 11 men left on base. So there you go. But he ends up getting through 5, which was good to see. And then Aniel De Los Santos comes on, and not the greatest outing for him. A little, a rough series for De Los Santos overall. And for him, look, the fact is that he is going to be at towards the bottom of the pecking order in this bullpen. There is a phrase I've used, a dividing line in that pen of high leverage and more lower leverage. But with it being a doubleheader, they kind of did use, some pitchers that maybe, you wouldn't see in such high leverage, but they kind of were trying to, play their cards right. So in the 6th, De Los Santos is able to throw a scoreless 6th inning. Then the 7th, it's a leadoff walk for Shanuel against De Los Santos. They bring on Jay Cousins, and he allows a 2-run homer to Zach Neto. His 15th homer of the year makes it 5-2. So, again, Neto, that was just the beginning of what he did. Not a great leadoff walk by De Los Santos, but Cousins, if there's one thing that I can think of, he has been kind of victim to the home run ball, even though, there's been some pretty good swing and miss stuff. I think Cousins done a really nice job kind of out of nowhere, but yeah, he does kind of have a propensity for the long ball. So that makes it 5-2. He does get into some more trouble, but no more harm done. And then in the 8th inning, Luke Weaver, who just continues to be, just a rock in that pen. A 1-2-3 inning in the 8th with a couple of strikeouts. And then the 9th inning, Clay Holmes looked good. Clay Holmes in a save spot, 5-2 game. He's able to get a 1-2-3 inning, including a couple of strikeouts himself. So good job by Weaver and Holmes. Holmes gets his 24th save, and the Yankees look like they're off and running to a 5-2 victory in game 1. But let's go to game 2. And Will Warren gets the start, and an exciting moment for him. It's his first start at Yankee Stadium. And Warren is considered one of the top prospects for the New York Yankees. Now, his numbers in AAA have not been great. But he did look pretty good against the Phillies. I mean, that one mistake to Austin Hayes, but he was able to keep minutes. So that was encouraging. And you would have figured here, against a lesser lineup at home, that maybe it would work out. It didn't. And he just wasn't able to stop the bleeding in the 2nd inning. He came close, but he was unable to do so. So here, you know what? I should kind of amend something I said earlier. Gleyber Torres actually did lead off against a righty in this 2nd game. The reason for that, though, I think was because Austin Wells was out of the lineup, so they wanted to have Verdugo, the lefty. Verdugo actually had a cleanup. So I guess the point there is that typically Verdugo will bat leadoff versus righties, but maybe not all the time if, let's say Wells is not in there. So, but yeah, well, and then Narvaez was actually good. He got on 3 out of 4 times and looked pretty good defensively too. So that's a good thing to see. Even though he's going to probably be basically somewhat irrelevant once Trevino comes back, he seems like he's someone that could definitely. The Yankees, for whatever the reason, somewhat of a catching pipeline that they've had, and obviously with varying degrees of success. But like, there's been a lot of catchers that come out of the system over the years. For an organization that I think has had a tough time developing certain position players. Obviously, Aaron Judge is the outlier. It seems like with the catchers, they've been able to do a decent job of it. So, Will Warren gets the start for the Yankees. For the Angels, the start was made by Carson Fulmer. And he wasn't really great at all, but it helped the fact that he gets out to that early 6-0 lead. It kind of probably helped him out a bit. He only goes 4 innings, 7 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, and only 1 strikeout. So a pretty ugly looking line. But again, you go down 6-0, you want the Yankees to fight back and whatnot, but it just, the other pitcher kind of settles in a little bit more, knowing you have that cushion. So second inning is where things just blow up on Will Warren. Kevin Pillar single, Matt Thaiss single, RBI single, Mickey Moniak makes it 1-0. Jo Adell walk, but then he gets LeBlanc and Stefanik to strike out. And this is with bases loaded. So here you are. It's all right, this could have been a disaster. And maybe you walk out of there 1-0. Unfortunately, Shanuel, the leadoff hitter, has a bases loaded walk. And what was frustrating here was the 3-0 pitch. It was a strike. And typically you'll see it called a strike. That was kind of the surprise there, was that they actually didn't. But could he have still walked him anyway? Potentially. So it makes it 2-0. Then the big blow happens. Zach Neto hits a grand slam. His 16th homer of the year makes it 6-0. And so right in that moment, you knew that this game had a completely different feel to it. And so Will Warren, let me just give the line on him. It ends up being 4 1/3 innings, 8 hits, 8 runs, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts. So pretty ugly for him. Will we see him again at some point this season? I guess it's possible. Not out of the question, but, with Schmidt coming back probably in a few weeks, hopefully you don't, unless you're in a situation where you have the luxury to do so and you're kind of playing out the string and you're in a decent spot. But I think that this, which I haven't discussed yet, we'll talk about it at the end, but as far as the division, where it's at, and, I think it's going to be close down to the wire. Second inning, Yankees do score a run. Jazz Chisholm Jr. with a double with 1 out, and then DJ LeMahieu with an RBI single to make it 6-1. And then you end up in a situation after a Narvaez walk. Gleyber Torres hits one to the track opposite field, but Jo Adell makes the catch. If Gleyber hits that out and makes it 6-4, then I think the whole feels different. But instead, it stays 6-1. And so Warren seemed like maybe he was going to settle in, but it doesn't exactly happen. Fourth inning, LeBlanc single, Stefanik double, and with 1 out, Zach Neto, 2-run double. So a huge, think about that for Neto. He gets 6 RBIs in game 2 after 2. He had 2 homers and 8 RBIs in one day. So really impressive for him. Provides pretty good defense too at short. This is someone that I think is going to be a good player. So that makes it 8-1. Then in the fourth, Yankees do get one back, a 1-out double for LeMahieu, single for Narvaez, and a sac fly for Gleyber Torres makes it 8-2. But that would actually end up being your final score. So just to go through it, Michael Tonkin, who kind of has he is kind of the long man in that bull, but not that he couldn't be used in some bigger situations, but he kind of is more of the guy to give you a little bit of length, and he does so. Pitches 2 innings, 2 hits, no runs, no walks, 2 strikeouts. Then Tim Hill comes on for an inning and 2/3, allows 2 hits. And then it would be Mark Leiter Jr. pitching the 9th, 1 inning, 1 hit, no walks, 2 strikeouts. So, yeah, just not a whole lot else to discuss. It's an 8-2 final. And, yeah, as far as just looking at, the only one who didn't get a hit was Volpe. So I guess looking back at it, yeah, not the greatest series for Volpe, but he was coming off a good hot stretch. And, again, LeMahieu with a couple of hits was good. The bottom of the order provided some pretty good production in LeMahieu and Narvaez, but they didn't really get a whole lot of juice out of the spots that you normally think they would. But anyway, they split the doubleheader. So now we go to Game 3. Game 3, just really, really bad, rainy conditions. And look, I think it made it tough on Nestor. But at the same time, Tyler Anderson dealt with it too, and Anderson was able to make out all right. Did the Yankees kind of hit some balls in some spots that were unideal? I guess so. But honestly, the line for Anderson, quite impressive. 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. Pretty damn good. Nestor Cortes, the loss drops into 5 and 10. 4 and 2/3 innings, 9 hits, 6 earned runs, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts. So his ERA goes all the way up to 4.42. Again, that 5 and 10 record is just ugly. And a little bit of bad. I mean, again, the record is a lot. It shouldn't be that bad, but and to be fair to Nestor, De Los Santos, a couple of those runs were inherited. But again, just not good enough. And yeah, for Cortes, he's not the pitcher that he was a couple years ago, and that wasn't that hard to predict. But it's sad because he was so much fun, and really looking back at that year, he was like the ace. Garrett Cole, we know what he is. He won the Cy Young last year. He is one of the best pitchers in the game. But Nestor Cortes in that regular season, for the majority of it, was just unbelievable. And the end of the road is probably coming. I mean, Nestor Cortes, he's under contract with the Yankees next year, but I don't know. I think that they probably really were considering trading him. And I hope that this story ends well. I really hope that Nestor is able to find it and really is a key contributor to this 2024 team. I don't know. I don't know. There's just a lot of inconsistencies, and just the body language isn't great. I don't know. I think that Cortes, has kind of been somewhat figured out, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. So in Game 3, it was your prototypical lineup, except I guess against lefties. The interesting thing is that Verdugo actually moves down to the 9 spot. So the reason for that, if I had to explain, I don't know. I guess normally against lefties he bats 7. I mean, yeah, we haven't seen that combination, I guess. But honestly, he did pretty well in that spot. He ends up reaching base 3 of 4 times. So again, Yankees still, you see more depth to this lineup, which is good. And that was a problem for a while. So I think 1 through 9, since they got Chisholm, since a couple of players are starting to heat up a bit, it's kind of making the lineup look a little bit fuller. Then again, though, in certain games, you're not necessarily getting the gaudy results. And I don't know, for whatever the reason, you'd think Yankee Stadium would be doing the Yankees more favors, but it just hasn't been. But anyway, Angels do jump out to the lead, and it's the first batter, Shanuel, 12th homer of the year. And so right off the bat, the Yankees are trailing. But they do tie it up in the second, and Jazz Chisholm Jr. gets his first home run at Yankee Stadium. I'm sure that meant a lot to him. He wanted it. And he gets it. His 18th homer of the season overall, combined with his time with the Marlins and the Yankees, ties it up at 1. But we go to the third, and you want that shutdown inning for Cortes. You don't get it. It could have ended up worse. But what ends up happening is it's a ground rule double for Stefanik, and then an RBI single for Shanuel makes it 2-1. And like I said, it could have been worse, but it ends up just being 2-1. Then let's go to the 5th. This is where things... the top of the 5th in this game is kind of the equivalent to the top of the 2nd in Game 2. And it actually starts out with a really nice catch by a couple of nice catches by Judge and Soto. And you end up with a runner on first and 2 out. But then the whole thing just kind of implodes on Nestor. And again, Zach Neto, another great, you just look at the box, another great game for him. A double for Neto makes it 2nd and 3rd, 2 out, and then Logan O'Hoppe walks. And they could have brought in De Los Santos. Nestor's pitch count was up there. The rain was really bad at this point. Look, it would have been a tough spot to bring De Los Santos in, to be fair. So I don't have a major problem, but Nestor gets ahead of Pilar 0-2. And Nestor goes with the funky sidewind delivery, and Pilar kind of just, he's able to extend over the plate. It was a ball. It wasn't a bad pitch by Nestor, but it was easy for Pilar to kind of slap it to the opposite field. So that was the frustrating part. I think that maybe the location, the execution could have been better for Nestor, because he really had Pilar looking silly. And Pilar gets a big 2-run single, make it 4-1. Then they bring on De Los Santos. He walks Anthony Rendon. So we've seen walks have been a little bit of an issue for De Los Santos. And then Joe Adele is able to get a bases clearing double. Soto goes to the diving catch, and he had to. He almost made the catch. And let's say he holds up on it, Angels end up scoring 2 runs anyway. So I have no problem with Soto going for it, and he just is unable to get it, and that makes it 7-1. So that really, puts things, basically out of reach for the Yankees. And so now they trail by 6. So a combination of Cortes and De Los Santos there. Let's go to the 7th. Jay Cousins comes on for De Los Santos, pitches a scoreless 7th inning. 8th inning is when you see Oswaldo Cabrera come in at shortstop for Volpe because he fouled that pitch off of his foot in the 2nd inning. But the fact that Volpe stayed in there for that long was already a good sign. X-rays came back negative. He should be all right. But Oswaldo comes in at short. Tim Hill pitches the 8th inning. He does allow a run. An RBI single to Zach Neto happens there. And then in the bottom of the 8th, Yankees do score a couple of runs. Mike Baumann, the former Oriole, comes on. LeMahieu single, Verdugo single, fly out for Torres, RBI single for Juan Soto makes it 9-2. And then after an Aaron Judge line out, Giancarlo Stanton with RBI single makes it 9-3. And then Austin Wells kind of flirted with a 3-run homer, but it only had warning track power as Adele makes the catch in right field. 9th inning, Tommy Kahnle comes on, pitches a 1-2-3. And then Ben Joyce, really hard-throwing young pitcher for the Angels. He can reach like 104 miles an hour. Very impressive home run by Oswaldo Cabrera. He goes opposite field. 8th home run of the year. So again, I'm very impressed with what I've seen from Oswaldo. That cuts it to 9-4. But ultimately, that would be your final score as Joyce would basically shut it down the rest of the way. So a pretty disappointing series loss to the Angels. Yankees record 6-68 and 48. They are tied with the Orioles. And it's kind of somewhat of a 3-way tie in the American League between the Guardians, the Orioles, and the Yankees. Cleveland is 67 and 47. So by percentage point, they're basically tied, but by percentage points, they're ahead of Baltimore and the Yankees. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be close. This division is going to be close. The American League is, MLB in general. I mean, as I'm recording this, the Phillies have the best record in baseball, but it's not by a lot. So, just kind of a lot of mediocrity. No team has really stood out above the rest. But now we go to this weekend series against Texas, and the Rangers are 5.5 games out of first place. So it's kind of teetering. Their season's kind of hanging in the balance, but it's still there. I don't feel confident in Texas making it, but look, they won the World Series last year. They still have some really good players on that team. So, but anyway, the first game, decent chance that one gets postponed. If you look at the forecast currently, it doesn't look great, but maybe things change. But the probables for that one is lefty Cody Bradford and then lefty Carlos Rodon. Rodon has been, pretty good lately. And, even though the ERA on the season, not very good, 4.37, 12-7 record, that is solid. So hoping that he can kind of continue his ways. And by the way, this is the first meeting between the Yankees and Texas this season. So that's the game 1 matchup. Game 2 is one that we've seen a bunch. Nate Eovaldi versus Garrett Cole. Now, I think about, unfortunately, the 2021 wild card game at Fenway Park. But that's just, for whatever the reason, these two have just lined up against each other a lot. Again, mainly and almost exclusively between the Red Sox and the Yankees. But yeah, Eovaldi, Cole, and Eovaldi having a pretty solid year, 8-5, 3.62 ERA. Cole looking to kind of find his groove. And then the last game will be actually another former Yankee pitcher, Andrew Heaney. And the record is ugly, 4-11, but the ERA is actually 3.98. So it's kind of like a Nestor Cortes situation, but more to the extreme. The record's worse, but the ERA is better. And then he'll take on Marcus Stroman, who really, really needs to find a way to turn things around. So I think this is going to be a tough series, but who knows? I kind of felt like the Blue Jays and Angels series wouldn't be as challenging as they were. So maybe the Yankees kind of find a way to get it in gear, but yeah, they need to find a way to win this series and at least finish the homestand with a winning record because, again, it's just been a struggle at Yankee Stadium. And this AL East is really very much up for grabs. And the Orioles, they are going to have a series at the Rays. And Tampa's competitive. Even though they traded away a lot of pieces at the deadline, they're still playing pretty good ball. So I would expect Tampa to give Baltimore some issues. And so we'll see where things net out as the weekend concludes. But yeah, in review, a rain-filled, ugly series at Yankee Stadium ends with the Angels taking 2 of 3 from the Yankees.